Welcome to the Simplified Dentistry podcast. Join us as we discuss clinical, operational, and financial aspects of your practice, help you enjoy life, and dare to simplify dentistry.
Welcome back to the Simplified Dentistry podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mustafa Shah-Khan. Today, we're here with Dr. Lior Tamir. Dr. Tamir is a dentist and founder of the Dental App. The Dental App is an all-in-one cloud-based practice management software with built-in CRM and patient engagement tools to streamline operations, boost revenue, and enhance patient care, all from a single seamless platform. Dr. Tamir, thank you for being with us.
It's really my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time today. This is kind of the Sunday morning podcast for us. We don't do a lot of these, and we really appreciate you taking the time, especially being on the West Coast. Dr. Tamir, tell us a little bit about your background. You know, how did you go from being a dentist to building a cloud-based practice management software?
Yeah, so the intention was never to go out and build PMS. It kind of happened along the way. Essentially, I got out of dental school in 2009. It was the peak of the financial crisis. I didn't really have any family in dentistry. And when I got out, I had a really difficult time finding a job that would help me essentially pay the bills. And one thing led to another. I just figured out I had to do something else. And I pretty much left dentistry for about 6.5, 7 years. I started, those were the early days of like Facebook ads. Advertising, and I started working in advertising, taught myself everything I could possibly know about that, and essentially ran an advertising agency. And along the way, we started building software for advertisers. So in that company, we built bid management software. So essentially, advertisers would come to us, or brands would come to us, and they'd say, hey, look, I got $30,000. I need to take that and optimize that spend against this goal. So we need to get, whatever, more sales or more signups or whatever it is. And so we built software that would automate that optimization. The first thing we built was just a tool to help us better communicate. So when we came to, so for those of you that don't know, Silicon Valley is extremely saturated with dentists. And one of the things that we wanted to do was say, all right, how are we going to differentiate ourselves? How are we going to be, a practice that stands out in the best possible way? And we spent a lot of time curating the patient experience that we wanted to create. And one of the things that was really important was to have a better way to communicate with patients chairside, to be able to tell them like, hey, these are the things you need to do, and this is why you need to do it, and help patients understand the why behind treatment. And so the first thing we built was like a guided patient exam. That it was like a clinical workflow that would take you through the different steps of a new patient exam. But that eventually became, okay, well, now that I have this, I got to treatment plan it. Now that I treatment plan it, I got to schedule it. Now that I scheduled it, I got to send an insurance claim. And it was constantly referencing like what I was currently doing with my old systems and what I wanted to do to run a really, simplified workflow and sophisticated system. And that's essentially, it became like full-blown practice management software. So it really came out of my own need. And along the way, our vision has really become to make dentistry more powerful, profitable, and human, to really create a tool for dentists that recognize the broader dental ecosystem and kind of the tools that are out there, and want to build thriving practices, and give them a tool that's really been designed from the perspective of a dental business operator. And that's kind of the story of the Dental App.
Yeah, I kind of look at what your mission statement is. And so you have built-in CRM. So let's talk about CRM, the advantages for practices to have CRMs. I think a lot of dentists don't even understand what CRM even means. And how is CRM and patient engagement tools an advantage to having this?
Yeah, so I think in order to really answer and understand that, we have to kind of take a step back and look at what is the challenge inside a dental practice, and how does this relate to other businesses, right? So, if you think about what we do in a dental office, patients come to us, we diagnose their problems, and then we try to help them understand what they need in terms of treatment, and then complete that clinically. And at the end of the day, the purpose of running a dental practice is to have a profitable one. I mean, we're not in this to lose money. We all have bills to pay, mortgages, kids, things like that. We're not volunteer workers. And so our goal is to do that in a profitable way. And in order to do that profitably, there's a lot of, essentially micromanaging of the patient experience along the way that's required. So if you leave dentistry, if we just put dentistry aside for a second, and we look at any other dentist profession or industry, so if you take, let's say plumbing or HVAC, or you take an e-commerce business, they don't have patients, they have leads, right? So
Sure.
those leads would come in, and then, let's say it's an e-commerce website, their job is to follow up with that lead and try to convince them to buy a certain product, and, track their different steps along the way. And that is all done with a system called a CRM. So CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. So, if we think about traditional practice management software is like a place where you would put your information in, right? And then historically, what dentists have been required to do is purchase multiple different third-party systems. So one for patient engagement, one for online scheduling, one for analytics, and then if you want to do marketing campaigns, you're essentially like using your analytics system to, segment and refine your patient base and export a list. And then you're taking that, maybe you're putting into a MailChimp to launch an email campaign or a promotion or things like that. Or maybe you pay an agency to do that.
And those are all out. Those are all outside of your practice management software, typically, with
historically.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so the concept of bringing so what a CRM does is it essentially tracks every interaction that you have with a lead or an existing customer to give you insights into that relationship, and then helps you maximize that relationship. So either, upselling them or things like that. So in dentistry, it has a slightly different context, right? For us, we have patients that, that come in and need treatment, patients that come in, don't need treatment. Maybe they need to be on recall. Maybe patients that come in, need treatment, do it, and then some of their treatment, they don't complete because they max out on, an insurance policy, or they're traveling, or whatever it is. Sometimes you have patients that need high ticket items like Invisalign or an implant, and they're thinking about it. And we know historically it takes like 6 to 8 months to actually get them to commit. Well, we have to manually manage or keep track of those interactions. And we do that with multiple third-party tools and a lot of micromanagement. And historically, we haven't had like the equivalent of a CRM that works with our PMS system. And so, I think for more context, like when I started my practice, a lot of what I did was keep track of these things, follow up with patients, have very specific, protocols in place to re-engage patients, get them back in, and always stay top of mind. And I think that if your treatment, I think in dentistry, there's like almost like the stigma about being salesy.
Sure.
And it's very different, right? We're not salesy at all. We treatment plan with the highest level of ethics and standards and so on, but then it's our job to run a profitable business. And so in order to do that, you have to follow up with patients. And, so many offices focus only on new patient count, but sometimes that's not just the answer. I mean, sometimes you have like hundreds of patients that have fillings, deep cleanings, periodontal therapy, need an implant because they're missing a first molar, need their wisdom teeth pulled out. And they don't do it because A, they don't want to spend the money, B, they don't, whatever. There's so many different reasons. They're traveling, they ran out of insurance, and it's our job to follow up with them. So following up with them, if we kind of agree that we've treatment planned ethically and honestly, and we've done the right thing there, it's our responsibility. And also, in order to run a very successful practice, to do all those follow-ups. So I scaled my first practice, $5 million in collections in its 7th full year from a startup. And I did that doing, in a very saturated market, doing these kind of things. And so what we've done with the dental app is we've taken those tools. So, in terms of, it wouldn't be a CRM, it would be, we call it a PRM, so patient relationship management. Or if you think about it differently, it's essentially a sales and marketing engine that we have layered into a practice management software to essentially empower practices to run more powerful, profitable, and human practices.
It's great you said that. I've been getting some questions from some of our listeners, which are kind of coming in real time, about practice management software. And one thing I think is interesting on the CRM capacity. We lost my longtime office manager, so My wife has been kind of filling in my office, and she is from a software background. She did, the CRM for Ucentric, JD Edwards, PeopleSoft, all that sort of stuff. And we're an EagleSoft practice. She looks at our software and she's like, how is there no way to track people who want their appointment moved up? People who have really kind of canceled their appointment and need it rescheduled without kind of being able to go in and pull an easy report for that. So it sounds like you guys are solving a lot of these problems and are making it so that there is a resource for practices to be more operationally efficient by being able to pull this data. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that, right? Today, you could hypothetically get a third-party analytics system and segment and refine and get these lists, like who's canceled or who's needed this or who's due for hygiene. But it's been historically challenging to then do all the follow-ups associated with it, and more importantly, keep track of what is being done within the office. So let me give you an example. So let's say you pull a list. Let's say you're using EagleSoft and Dental Intel, and maybe you're using Medento. So you pull the list through Dental Intel. You say, all right, show me all my patients that have been in the office that are overdue for hygiene and maybe need some fillings. And then maybe you send them an email blast saying like, hey, here's some availabilities for hygiene, you're overdue. And maybe some of them schedule that way. And then but what happens to the ones that don't schedule? And then what happens if there's like a phone call made to reach out to some of these patients? How do you keep track of that? And then how do you know that you're not bombarding them? And how do you add notes in relation to that conversation that you're having, right? So that's essentially the missing component, right? So you have today you technically could like duct tape something together to say, all right, pull that list for me. Yeah, it does require, you got to do your research. You got to find which system you want. You got to install it. You got to pay for it. You got to do that. So you can get the list. You can do some basic outreach, but to keep track of the overarching conversation and to have like a holistic insight into the relationship that you have with that patient across the multiple touch points. Remember, we have websites, we have phones, we have multiple employees that might talk to the patient. There's really nothing to accommodate that, and that's really where you have to get past the point solution conundrum that we find ourselves in as dental practice owners, to really see that vision through.
So a couple questions. I'll look at kind of your site and what it says. How does the dental app reduce time for the practice on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, there's many ways. So there's if whoever's not seen the demo of the dental app, essentially we have practice management software. You have all of your automation. So you have like your reminders, reputation management. You have an insurance claims dashboard. You kind of have a bunch of the most important workflows built in. So, I mean, we save time with insurance, the insurance workflow, just by organizing that. So historically, let's say you're using like Open Dental or Dentrix or EagleSoft, you're completing an appointment, you're submitting a claim, you're typically going into a clearinghouse, adding an attachment, you're copying and pasting that detail back to your PMS system. You're printing out a report to keep track of outstanding insurance claims, and that's how you do a lot of the follow-up. So, for example, just organizing that into a streamlined dashboard where you can see, you're doing your attachments within our solution, you're adding your x-rays, you're adding your narratives, you're able to keep track of outstanding insurance claims, you're able to keep track of claims that have not been submitted, you're able to quickly pull up and see which claims need follow-up, that it's been more than 30 days. Like, that's a perfect example. Another one is just automating the confirmation process and so on. Just having everything at your fingertips, you're saving a bunch of time in terms of like moving from one solution to the other. And then you're also saving a bunch of time by simplifying the workflow necessary to run a practice. So that's a good example.
So is it proprietary software and things that are built into the dental app, or is the dental app using Solution Reach and Vine and things like that?
Yeah, so I think you have to dive a little deeper into that. So Vine is a clearinghouse, right? Dental Exchange is a clearinghouse, right? So
Yeah.
So we're not a clearinghouse, but we integrate into, for example, in our case, we build into Dental Exchange. So but it's a seamless integration. So you're never logging into Dental Exchange to do anything. There's what's called an API, which is essentially like a back-end interface for softwares to talk to each other. And our entire system is built and designed around the Dental Exchange API to be able to take an insurance claim and see it all the way through, add attachments, etc. Everything we do is proprietary. Nothing, we haven't plugged into Solution Reach or anything like that. So all of our confirmation system, reminder system, the actual CRM component where you can search and filter by different attributes, create lists, and then, turn patients with outstanding treatment into pipelines, send out broadcasts, marketing campaigns. All of that's completely proprietary and built from the ground up, and it's unique to the dental app.
So, for instance, we use Solution Reach. So, let's say we pull up our list and we see that we have 100 people who haven't scheduled hygiene. So then we take that list and we go into Solution Reach and we start sending individual text messages through Solution Reach. Is there an automated component in the dental app that keeps this from happening and also tracks it?
Exactly that. So you can pull out that list, you can create a sequence, right? Or like a set of automated responses. And for example, you could say, hey, 30 days before someone's due, send them this text message, include this book online link and say, hey, you're going to be due for hygiene. The day that they're due, send them a follow-up reminder and say, hey, you're now due, and here's a link to schedule. 15 days after they're due, send a follow-up text message, say, now you're past due, here's a link, and so on and so forth. And so you can customize, you can create these sequences and customize it, and then everything is tracked in the app itself.
So the book online capacity, is that integrated just directly into the software?
That's
so
also correct. Yep. Okay. So it's a full. So we have online scheduling, all of the text messaging, all of the automation, all of the reminders, reputation management, insurance claims, analytics, reporting, sales, like the sales and marketing CRM component. So I think that's probably one of the most unique things about what we're doing is you can essentially find patients that have outstanding treatment and turn them into a pipeline to follow up with. So, I don't want to call it a sales pipeline. It's like a treatment pipeline. So you can say, here are all my patients that have that need a crown. And then there's a dedicated dashboard where staff can log in and message the patient, start a phone call, email the patient, and it logs all that communication and when it was done. And, staff can add notes, and then they're moving the patient down a funnel or a pipeline. So first it's a patient that needs treatment. Then it's a patient that needs treatment that's been followed up with once, then followed up with twice. Then maybe they scheduled and maybe they end up completing it, or maybe you archive them or they moved away. But, there's really unique and proprietary tools to help practice owners run more profitable practices built in. I think one thing that's really important to note is the dental app is a really young company. So we've been around, we've been building for about 6 years. We've been in the market with live practices for approximately 16 months. So we're constantly innovating and the tools keep getting better. Like what offices see today, when we started coming to market about a year and a half ago, a little under that, we didn't really have a lot of these components. Earlier this year, we launched our first iteration of the CRM. Since then, we've launched a bunch of additional features, but we have some really exciting things that we've been working on to start factoring in artificial intelligence into the CRM, having recommendations on who to reach out to and what to actually say to them. And so, as the technology continues to improve, the systems will get better at helping offices really capitalize on, their interactions with patients.
So let's talk real quick about, you said artificial intelligence is there's an aspect that's going to be built in. What aspect is that? Is it actual artificial intelligence, or is it more machine learning, or is it data, aggregation, or what is it?
Yeah. So I think it's important to identify what are the areas that we see AI come into play in dentistry today, right? So for example, there's many companies focused on automating as much of the insurance claims process as possible with AI, right? So, you have companies that do what we call computer vision. So like Pearl and Overjet, like they read your x-rays and they identify things that they see. So that's an example of AI. There's another example of AI, which is like there's companies called like Lassie or Zentist, right? And what they're doing is they're automating the process of entering an EOB. So they're using artificial intelligence to read an EOB or an ERA if it's digital, and then write back all that information, do the write-offs, and post the EOB directly to the patient chart. So they're kind of taking the boring data entry work that somebody is required to do and automating that. And then you have like this concept of LLMs or kind of generating text, right? So like, let's say a patient asks a question like, hey, what should I expect for my post-op, for after wisdom teeth extraction, after an implant? I mean, we could sit there and type something out, but you have tools like ChatGPT that, you can say, hey, spit out a post-op instruction for me and tell me exactly what to say to this patient in terms of what to expect. And it'll generate something, then you can edit it and then send it out. And it's going to be extremely robust and detailed and so on. So what we're trying to do is we're actually working on integrating ChatGPT or that LLM, customize it to the specific use cases that we deal with the dental app, where it's going to, on one hand, use our own data to kind of uncover and say, like, look, these are patients that really need to be followed up with. And then the second hand is using something like ChatGPT to actually create the text and the recommendation of what to say to these patients, and then automate that whole process so it's all built in, and then send that out. I think there's many different companies working on different AI solutions within dentistry. That's kind of the use case that we're focusing on in terms of the dental app.
And kind of with another question we just got, with filtering of lists, does dental app allow filtering of lists that will show user preferences, such as the most recent request for an earlier appointment?
Sure. I mean, you have like an ASAP list, right? So that you can say, okay, this patient really wants to come in sooner. But all of the preferences are constantly being tracked in the patient persona or the patient profile, right? So we have like a cover page where you can add details to, you can add medical history alerts, you can toggle the recall schedule. So like some patients need to be on a 3-month, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it is. And then, you can, through the CRM or the list generation component of it, you could say, hey, show me all my patients that are active, that have been in the office in the last year, that last appointment included x-rays, that they have an outstanding crown, that they don't have a balance, that they don't have an insurance claim, and the preferred provider is Dr. Lior. Or,
Sure.
like you can generate a compounded list with those 7 attributes and get that list and then do something with it.
Kind of looking at a little bit about what is described about the software. Talks about offices getting paid faster. How does the office get paid faster? How is insurance more efficient?
That's a really great question. So if we go back to the old school way of doing insurance-based follow-up, right? So you send out an insurance claim, right? Through your PMS, you log into Dental Exchange or Vine, you're adding your attachments, you're copying the code, and then you wait, right? There is a certain degree of, like a big part of it is like having transparency into that process and having the ability to be more proactive. So for example, sometimes errors come up, a claim gets rejected, missing payer ID, wrong attachment, not enough information. And sometimes it takes like 21 days or 14 days for the office to realize that happened and then have to follow up with it. So for example, in my practice, before I used the dental app, so before it was ready to roll, we had a certain amount of days that it would take us to get paid on an insurance claim. And then as soon as we had more transparency into it, first of all, as a business owner, being able to have a dashboard where I could see, hey, these are all the claims that haven't been sent. Here are the claims that have been sent, filtered by the date of service, filtered by the date that they were sent out, without having to pull a report. Like I don't need to, I can also do that, but just having that level of transparency and making sure that things are being followed up with allowed us to have a more proactive process to get things done. And we shortened our time to get paid on insurance claim by about 30%. So just having more transparency and streamlined processes, we're able to get things done faster.
Another thing the website talks about is stop chasing growth. How does the dental app help me achieve growth without chasing it?
This is really, I think this is like where, and by the way, we have so many things that we're super excited about between now and the end of the year. One of them is like a major update to the website. We've really spent a lot of time trying to find better ways to talk about what we're doing. And I'm super excited about that. But when you think about what are the tools necessary to run your practice, right? Like let's like if you're going to run a super sophisticated data-driven practice, you need your PMS, obviously, right?
Sure.
You need your patient engagement tools, right? We agree on that. You need to submit insurance claims, right? But then you need to track these things, right? So you need like an analytics tool like Dental Intel, Practice by Numbers. You really need to have a tool like that if you're going to track your growth and then fine tune it. And then you need the tools to actually launch campaigns, nurture campaigns, follow up with patients, keep track of all of that. So one of the biggest hurdles for most practice owners that I talk to is that it's very overwhelming, right? Like they want to run their practice. Okay, so they have like their Dentrix or their Open Dental or their EagleSoft, and then trying to figure out which tool. There's so many tools and there's a lot of overlap, right? So for example, Vine is a perfect example. That's a company that started off with like phone systems that would pop up and show you who's calling, and then eventually it became like patient engagement tools and
Sure.
sorry, not Vine, Weave. Weave is the one I was talking about. So
Sure.
So Weave is the one that, it started off like, I remember that feature coming out. It was super cool. Like it would pop up, it would show you who's calling. And then eventually they either acquired or started to add more functionality. And same thing with like Dental Intel. Dental Intel started as like an analytics, a pure analytics product. Then they acquired Medento. And now all of a sudden they have like the engagement tools and the campaigns and so on. So there's a lot of overlap between the multiple different systems that you have to pick. And then they don't all work really nicely with each other. And so as a practice owner, it's like, man, how do I get what I need? Which analytics solution, which engagement solution, et cetera. What we've really tried to do is build from the ground up something that works cohesively together, right? So, I think Dental Intel is a great product. I think Medento is a great product. I've heard some offices complain about like, hey, when I create a list, I have to save it in Dental Intel. Then I have to log into Medento. I have to update it. It's not really based on real-time data. And so I think one of the biggest challenges that offices experience is that there's an overwhelming amount of solutions to pick and choose from. And it's really confusing to understand what exactly you need, right? And then to top that off, as practice owners, we come out of dental school, we're not really being educated on how to run a practice. What are the best practices? What are the standard operating procedures? We kind of have to learn along the way how to run our practices. And so what we've really tried to do, there's like this relentless optimization effort on our end to constantly build a solution that's built from the ground up to give you the core tools you need, like including analytics, all those tools that we mentioned before.
So would you call it growth through efficiency? Is that when you're saying you're stopping and chasing growth, but there's not actual products in here that are leading to your growth, except for from marketing perspectives and things like that? It's more you're going to get better practice growth because your operations are more efficient, and then you can focus on other things.
Well, I think that is the product. I mean, how many practices do you? So if I said to you today, Doc, can you pull up a list of all your patients that have?
I'm gonna tell you, I can't pull up anything.
So I think that's a very unique situation. And then can you assign that list to a staff member and then track every interaction they have? Like when they text message, when they call, when they email, how many times they did it, when they did it last. Do you have a way to track that?
No.
Okay. So that's a perfect example of how we could change your workflow to help you drive more growth. How do you know that your staff is actually following up with these patients? Let's take high ticket items, right? Invisalign, veneers, all on X, implants. On average, right, we know that it takes 6 to 8 interactions with a patient to get them to close on a big ticket item like that, right? Are you tracking those interactions, and are you doing that at scale? And do you have a way to make sure that you're actually doing that? Let's say a patient comes in, They need an implant. They're missing tooth number 19, tooth number 30. They have a kilometer of bone. They really need that so that their bite doesn't collapse. You've taken the time, you've educated them. How do you know that your staff is following up with them and trying to get them to understand the importance and maybe pre-approve them for financing or get them back in? Most practices don't have a good answer for that, right? And
Sure.
so the reason is that you're either doing this manually, right? You're doing this with Post-it notes, right? You have like your list or Excel spreadsheets, like, hey, office manager, here are the patients that we talked about that we need to follow up with. I remember I saw this patient 2 weeks ago. Okay, she does it once, right? Month goes by, still hasn't scheduled. Whatever, the patient missed the call, forgot to respond, didn't have the money at the time, was going on vacation. Do you have a second follow-up? Do you have a third follow-up? Do you have a sixth follow-up? How are you doing that, right? And so many offices depend on new patients only, right? They're like, my growth is new patients. That's how I'm going to grow. That's how I'm going to hit my target. But that's really hard to do. And it's also a missed opportunity because most offices are sitting on hundreds of patients that need outstanding treatment, right? And so that's the growth element that, and then the other side of it is then measuring it, right? So the same way that you can pull up the list, but you can't really keep track of the operation. And then how are you measuring that they're coming back in? I think that's the secret sauce, right? That like when you start to really meddle all of those different components of the operation together and you create a tool or you have a tool that tracks and measures all of that, that's where growth comes into play.
Let's talk about a simple thing that I think is extremely valuable, especially from Invisalign. I'm a student of mollusk coaching with regard to Invisalign.
I took mollusk too.
Yeah, mollusk is great. So one thing that Ryan talks a lot about is having on your schedule everybody who has adult Invisalign coverage or adult orthodontic coverage and something identifies in there. Can the dental app solve that problem? Can it look into the insurance and can you have a setting where it's putting an eye on everybody's chart or on the schedule or something like that? Because that's kind of a manual process that we had to get somebody to go through and look up Invisalign coverage.
Yeah, so the short answer to that is not currently, right?
Okay.
We're working with Verific, which is a AI-driven like insurance breakdown company. Our goal is to have that integrated into our solution, so it would pull up that information, write it back to the patient chart, and you'd be able to set that alert. So again, where we're at, right? And we get asked this kind of questions a lot. It's like, again, we've been around. I'm not making any excuses, but we've been around for a very short amount of time, and we're building a lot of really innovative products. If you give us another 18 months, 24 months, I'll be able to say yes to just about everything, and things like that will get resolved. At this time, you can't do that, but it's definitely something that we're working on, that exact use case.
So when I did the demo with you, there was a portion of it, and tell me if I'm wrong, there's a portion of it that showed kind of the icons for the different products that are utilized through the dental app. Now, are all of those integrated into it, or kind of when we looked at it, one thing that is my pet
You're talking
peeve,
about like our app store concept.
Yeah, your app store concept. So one thing that I don't like is the having to go to another window to view images.
We talked about that. Yeah.
Things like that. Yeah. Have you guys kind of gotten through that now, where it's integrated into it, or do you still have to go out to another window?
Yeah. So let's talk briefly about the app store concept, because I think this is a really important point. Most PMS systems outside of Open Dental are very closed systems, right? So they have like a walled garden, and you kind of have to work with what they curate for you or what they pick and choose for you. And our goal is to not do that, right? I feel like so for example, we have some partners in the App Store. For example, we work with a specific reporting system that is somewhat overlapping with what we do. And we do that because we have practices that love their product and want to keep using that product, right? And so it doesn't matter that we overlap. There are specific features that they want to be able to use. And I think that it's really important in the dental ecosystem to create more open platforms so that offices can have the ability to pick and choose what they want, right? When we set out to build this, right, again, remember, it started off as a clinical workflow tool and it eventually became a PMS system. The one thing that we said to ourselves we're not going to do is build imaging. Imaging is difficult for a few different reasons. One is to really do imaging right, you really should be connecting to X-ray sensors via SDK, not Twain drivers. Then there's all kinds of other things. There's FDA regulations as it pertains to imaging. There's integration with, there's transferring data, all that stuff, right? And imaging has been solved in an exceptional way. The company that we specifically integrate is called Soda Cloud, right? So Soda Cloud has been around for a very long time. They had Soda Server. Actually, from what I understand, the founder of Dexis Imaging is the person who ended up spinning out and building out Soda Cloud. So we just said, all right, we're going to partner up with this company, and we have a bridge which opens up a different tab, and that's what you're talking about. We are still working on pulling in everything into our interface, so you don't have to actually open up a separate tab, but that's around the corner. You're going to start seeing that roll out in our product in the very near future. But the whole concept where this conversation started, or the question started, is our app store. Our goal is to have an app store where then offices can pick and choose. Like, we're going to provide our core services, which is the patient engagement tools, automatic reminders, reputation management, online scheduling, insurance claims. We have a basic eligibility and verification product. Essentially, we ping the API from Dental Exchange, and we just present the raw or the information that they send back. It's not the most robust, but it's better than nothing. So we provide that. But for example, when Verific comes into play, you'll be able to activate that. And they have an entire company dedicated to solving that specific problem. And our goal is to just keep adding options to the App Store. So for example, we get asked a lot about the different AI voice operators, right? So there's Dentina and Art and Annie, and there's a bunch of them. So our goal is to, again, different offices have different ones, and our goal is to make it super easy to be able to pick the one that you already use and activate it and turn it on. And so that's the whole concept of our App Store, and our goal is to just create a really robust ecosystem to allow practice owners to pick and choose the things that are the best for their use case.
And you're still in the App Store, you're still subscribing to that particular app and paying whatever subscription fee that is. That's outside of the dental app, correct?
That's correct.
Something that I was looking at today, which I think is kind of interesting to the wall concept you were just talking about. The Shine with Dentrix in the upcoming update, it's no longer going to allow you to submit to the Vine clearinghouse for insurance, which is kind of crazy because I guess KKR has taken an investment in another clearinghouse. So basically, they're going to make all Dentrix claims go to the other clearinghouse. So it's kind of that, restricting kind of what the practices can do and things like that. So, I mean, I assume that that's kind of not something that can happen with something like Dental App. Dental App is going to give you whatever opportunity you want. Is that correct?
Yeah. As fast as we can integrate it, we will. Right. And again, this is what's really unique about what we're doing is this has been designed, tested, optimized from the perspective of a practice owner. I mean, I kind of built this out of my own need, and I also understand the reality of what it takes to integrate. Obviously, we've picked our initial partners, but we keep adding, and our mission is to make it open, right? We are not looking to, we're not in a position to make kingmakers, and as we scale, our goal is not to become that player. Our goal is to give equal opportunity to the best possible product, because at the end of the day, who wins? It's the practice owner.
Yeah. And as you and I both know, as practice owners and clinicians, people are constantly trying to get their hands in dentist pockets. I feel like I can't tell you how many times I've heard people whose ultimate goal is just to make as much profit off of dentists as they can. And that kind of makes it tough. And I think that's kind of where, you start thinking, is this what Dentrix is doing? They're just they're making more profit off of this, so they're going to make you use it. So I think
Sure.
dentists need opportunities to choose whatever they want to use and to be open. I think an open system is very, very valuable.
Yeah.
How's the dental app different than EagleSoft's cloud-based solutions and things like that? Or it doesn't even have to be EagleSoft, but any of the legacy softwares that are going
So
to
EagleSoft, theirs is Fuse, right? That's the, yeah. So, I mean, I really didn't want to get on here to kind of throw anyone under the bus or say mean things about them. I think the reality is
that you know that.
Sure.
I mean, we all want
Yes.
to know what is the advantage and why should I choose this opportunity versus another opportunity.
100%. I think there's many different factors at play, and it's not just one specific thing. At the end of the day, the dental app is the only PMS system on the market that has a sales and marketing engine designed to help you grow your practice. So, we're not for everyone. We are for the specific type of dentist who wants to be a dental business operator. The dentists who want to have those thriving practices and want the seamless integration with tools or the seamless tools right out of the box to help them, identify opportunity, take advantage of those opportunities, market to their patients, measure the performance, and run a streamlined practice. We are the only player that has that sales and marketing component integrated from day one. We do your data conversion. I can show you in your onboarding call your opportunities, and you can immediately get to work on, adding production, getting more patients in, marketing to them. And that's really the difference, right? Like if you want the most clinically advanced, hyper focused on clinical, there's definitely things that we don't have. Maybe one day we'll get to that point. But if you're looking to have the most robust business focused PMS system to help you grow and optimize your practice, we're the main player for that. And that's really the line in the sand. There's everything else. And there's great systems out there. They're really focused on improving and optimizing your operations. They're looking to help you manage better. And we're looking to help you manage and grow.
So I think kind of one of my last few questions, cloud-based software, you're depending on strength of your internet signal. My internet in my office is spotty, and there's lots of times I'll look at it and be like, man, if I was relying on cloud-based softwares for operations today, I would be shut down. How do you counter that concern, and how efficient can you be on operating on cellular data if for some reason your internet's going down, and how secure is that?
So I think that there's a few different ways to answer that question. There are many offices that are in slightly more rural areas or have less ideal internet situations, right? If you think about what does it cost to get a good internet connection, so let's say it's like $60, $100 a month, right? There are systems that you can get as backups. So for example, here in my house, I'm in like a hilly area. So I have like cable internet, but I also have Starlink, which is, it's a satellite-based internet solution. And that's how I ensure that like if one goes down, I have another. And it costs me, in total under $200 a month to solve that, right? So in my office, I have extremely reliable internet. So that's not really necessary. I'm kind of in a business district, and the internet, that's honestly the last thing that goes down. It's most likely PG&E in California who knock my power out, and it'll be a perfectly sunny day, no wind, and the power goes out. That's how you know PG&E's doing some construction. That's usually my issue in my area. But usually it's not the internet. So if you have internet issues and you know that it's a consistent issue, then there's a price to pay, and you get some backup internet. I think that's what you would typically do, right? Like if you're in an area where it's less of a, I always ask the question though, like, what are you missing out on by not having a cutting edge solution today, right? And I think that that's really a much bigger price that you are paying by staying on a server. Now, you could say the same thing, like, okay, server, you have it on premise. So if the internet goes out, you have your system. What if the electricity goes out, right? So I mean, you could start playing this game, and then you got to get a backup generator or solar power for your office. I mean, you can go down this rabbit hole. Sometimes things happen, and you just deal with it. Usually, if the internet goes down, it's usually for like an hour or two, or if the power goes down, it's usually for a few hours. You're not like out for months on end. It's funny enough, about 6 months ago, I was talking to an office, and we're in the process of doing the onboarding for them. And in the middle of that, there was a hurricane that had gone through the practice, and their server went flying, and they by chance happened to find the server and get the backup, and they were able to get going. I mean, like there's other natural disasters that can happen that have much bigger implications if you're storing all of your information on site and you're not consistent about getting backups and so on.
So kind of a couple wrap up questions. Obviously our organization is Simplified Dentistry, and we kind of ask everybody who is with us, our overall goal is, how can we help practices simplify their day-to-day operations, clinically, operationally, and financially. What's your advice for our listeners on what they can do to simplify their dental practice?
To really answer that, every practice owner has a vision for what they want, right? A vision for how they want patients to experience their dentistry, their practice, what they want to squeeze out of their practice. And then some offices have no clear vision, right? And I think in order to simplify anything and get it to line up with kind of what you want to achieve, that's really the first and foremost, most important thing, is to identify what is it that you're trying to achieve in your practice? What's your vision for your practice? What kind of energy do you want to bring into it? And what do you want to squeeze out of it? And then design your operation accordingly. So I think that with a North Star and some vision in place, you can really do pretty incredible things. And I would say that the best way to simplify your practice is start there and even audit like what's going on. Like if you have a vision and idea, but you're in the weeds all day and you don't give yourself the time to actually go and run the business, right? That at the end of the day, that's a really important thing, the administrative side of things. Then you're never going to be able to simplify things and improve things and so on. So I think at this point, I've talked to so many dentists, and it's like one or the other bucket, right? It's people with a vision and a goal and a plan, or people without a vision, a goal and a plan, but a practice, and they don't really know what to do with it. And so I think it's important to just start with a North Star. What do you stand for? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? What's working? What's not? And then kind of build a game plan to work against it.
Well, thank you. One other thing, we've all done different things, or not all of us, but some of us have done different things in dentistry. One thing that Simplified Dentistry also talks about is kind of the entrepreneurial dentist. You've obviously gotten out of dentistry, did software, got back into dentistry, and now you're doing software. What's your advice for the entrepreneurial dentist? There's a lot of guys and girls who want to get out from what I say, get out from the operatory and do other things and not just be total clinicians. If somebody were to have an entrepreneurial mindset, what would you tell them?
That's a great question. I think there's different arenas to be an entrepreneur in, right? There's the arena of being a dentist, right? So for example, within dentistry, I think it's like 8 to 15% of the industry has been rolled up. That's a big trend that's happening. Like there's humongous opportunities there. And so there's like that, but there's also like, hey, I want to bring an innovative product to market, or hey, I want to buy an ice cream shop, or whatever it is. So it's a little different depending on which arena you want to play in. But there's a lot of analysis paralysis that comes into play, and sometimes you just got to jump in and try and do something, see if it works, and then kind of pivot from there. I think at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur has become a really popular term. It's really like operating a business, right? So when you're operating a business, running a business is essentially solving problems, right? So you're in the dental business, it's like, problem number one, get a patient in. Okay, so you've solved that. Now, problem number two, you've treatment planned and do the dentistry. Problem number three is like do it at scale, and then make sure it's profitable and so on. But essentially, what you're doing is you're solving small little problems that all add up to running a business. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to identify the arena that you want to play in. So it could be, hey, I want to start a small DSO. So I would say the first thing you should do is educate yourself. Go and find out who's done it, how do they do it, what are the steps. There's some great courses out there. Scott Luna has that one course on multi-practice mastery that that's really fascinating. And then start doing things. I mean, it does you no good to just think about things. You have to kind of at some point take the leap of faith, believe in yourself, don't look back, and go for it.
Well, I tell people all the time when they're talking about this, I think you have to look at what your strengths are. I mean, if for me, my strength has always been in business applications, but healthcare oriented. So I don't jump outside of the healthcare world and try to do other things. Some people, may be great at real estate and real estate development. So maybe that's kind of their strength to kind of get out of it. And dentistry kind of gives you the opportunity to build a successful career, achieve wealth, and jump into other things. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate having you. I think the dental app sounds fantastic. For our listeners who are interested in doing a demo and kind of connecting with you a little bit more, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, if they want to schedule a demo, just through our website, it's thedentalapp.com. There's a big button that says book a demo. I also am available all the time. People message me on Facebook, on Instagram, on my email. All my contact info is readily available. Maybe we can throw it in with the podcast. But happy to connect with anyone, whether they're customers, not customers, want to pick my brain, want to talk, want to just connect. I'm in this industry. I'm all in on this industry, and love talking to dentists and just being a value add contributor to the community. So I really appreciate you having me on, and thanks for the conversation.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.